Welcome, everybody, to another DualShockers discussion. I am joined once more with my RPG bud, my Australian doppelganger, Mr. Kris to talk a bit about Cold Steel 4 that recently came out. How's it going, Kris?
It's going pretty well. Late in the evening, but always down to talk about this series in particular, but RPGs in general to my doppelganger, as you say.
Yes, but we are here to talk all about spoiler-heavy. If you haven't played these games, just be warned, this will be filled with spoilers. We will hold nothing back, but we are going to be talking about The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4, the end of the Erebonia saga that recently released. At the time of recording, released about a week ago. So let's just jump right into it. There's two endings, so we'll start off with the true ending that you get, the Path to Unknown. So Reen gets taken over by Ishmelga, wins the rivalries. Valimar gets corrupted, and with the power of friendship and all sorts of awesomeness, manages to defeat it. What was your kind of reaction, and what did you think of the ending?
Well, the funny thing is that you have to go through the normal ending first, and it's really bittersweet, so we'll talk about that later. But so you go in with that, like there is no way to avoid that before you face the true one, so you go in already pretty raw. It's like, no, I don't want to end it on that. I'll be satisfied, but I won't be happy. So let's get something better here. And then, sure enough, it goes, full power of anime and everything, power of friendship, which is a motif for the entire series. But I mean, this is the only series I've ever seen really try and sell that and actually make it work. Because it's not just, hey, power of friendship and we suddenly win. It's like, no, this is built up, this is developed.
Oh yeah,
you see this built up over this entire time. And yeah, so this was a culmination of not just 4 Cold Steel games, but what are we at, 9 games, basically 12 total, but the first 3 don't count per se. So this is basically 9 games, 9 big, like 100-hour JRPGs, wrapping up most of the threads that have been building towards this and built on top of that. So that's a lot going into it, and so to finally actually answer your question, I thought it was pretty damn good, all things considered.
Yeah, it had a lot of things to juggle, and I hadn't realized, and I guess because you touched on it, and I hadn't realized that you had to see the original ending first in order to even gain access to the true endings, as it were. With the original ending, it plays out for a good portion. You finish the rivalry fight with Osborne. Valimar absorbs Ishmelga and gets corrupted, but Reen manages to retain control of his mind and body and ends up, in essence, flying up into the atmosphere and detonating or exploding Valimar in order to destroy Erebonia's curse for good. And then it rains down angel feathers kind of thing, with Milliam and Crow with Ordine. That, I felt very similar to you. I was like, no way. That's how it's going out? For me, it was like, the biggest takeaway, the thing I was most kind of let down by when I thought that was the ending was the final boss fight, and not so much the ending itself. I was like, this is a JRPG. Where's the secret boss that we haven't really heard of, or the crazy thing that
the giant's basically from nowhere, as it were. Right.
And to end it with just the rivalry fight in the giant mech fight, it was a fun fight, don't get me wrong, but it was like, really? That's it? And then when it said, by doing this, you've unlocked the ability to change fate and all that stuff, where you get that big climactic fight with Ishmelga Loge, and everything. But yeah, that was an emotional hit. It was like, no way.
Yeah, I think the fact that I knew there was another ending going into it and that's not from outside knowledge. That's not looking it up or anything. That's the fact that I did all the side content, basically. And if you do all that in the final chapter set, there's a whole bunch of little side quests and things. And if you trigger those, you end up getting the ability to do like a secret quest, which has you go deal with that in a bit, basically. But what happens for the true ending is that if you didn't have that condition met, a portal opens up in the final dungeon, I believe, and you can go basically retroactively do that.
Yeah, it opens up right in the entrance to the whole cathedral kind of area, like right outside. A big spooky dark portal opens up and takes you directly to where that happens. So
yeah, so you can actually find the Sanctus Shrine beforehand, and it's the only place you can play with Toval in your party in the game, aside from the set party in the Pale. It's a little detail. But so you end up tracking down the details of that place, find it based on the clue, go in, and then you end up fighting the Holy Beast that you killed at the end of Cold Steel 3.
Right, it's like the ghost or what remains of the Septarian of Earth.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool, and after beating that, you get the Earthen Prison, I believe it's called, which basically locks Ishmelga, the real Ishmelga, the curse itself. The AI that gained sentience from Ishmelga, the Divine Knight, which is the root of the curse, is how they put it together. Kind of interesting. And Ishmelga I got very strong Full Metal Alchemist vibes from Ishmelga's look. But it was very cool to First off, what did you think of Ishmelga Loge fight?
I thought that was probably the best implementation they've done of a multi-party fight in the series so far, because you had a couple of climactic fights in 3 and 4 had it where you set the parties up and then at certain health thresholds you swap. So obviously Osborne did that as well, which made for a decent final fight if it was the normal, if you wait for the normal ending, as it were. But so this one has it. No, you can flip them on the fly, and they each fight a different boss, with one basically applying physical protection, one applying magical protection to the core boss, which Reen and the main party fight. And you have to swap between them and keep them down to make that happen. And I thought that was a really, really good way of implementing just the sheer number of characters you had to start off, make everything it did feel really good. It did have the whole, the big Avengers Endgame moment prior to that, with the portals opening up and everyone pouring out and going, yeah, we got this.
Yeah, we're here to help you in this final fight. It's like, and for listeners, Kris and I had been talking back and forth during both of our playthroughs leading up to the reviews and everything. And I just kept saying, like, this feels like Marvel's Avengers as a video game. It's like, and Cold Steel 4 is Endgame. Like, you have everybody here. You had the Liberal crew from Trails in the Sky series. You had the SSS from Trails of Zero and Trails to Azure. The Crossbell games, and they all appear. Like, and this game released before Endgame, so really Endgame stole this from Cold Steel 4. That's my headcanon that happens. But everyone appears, and then for this huge climactic fight against a partially reformed god, in essence, you have them all fight together. You have access to 39 party members to form these 3 teams that you will fight the final boss with. And it's like, it's ridiculous, because you have Viscount Arcade, you have General Le Guin, you have all these characters that, for the longest time, it's just like, they're god tier. And you can do your fan pairings however you want. It was so cool.
Yeah, and they really do hype up a lot of these characters, not just the ones from previous games, but as you said, like, you highlighted Aurelia and Victor Arcade in particular, because, you know, in 3 they had one big showdown and everyone watching it was just like, this is bullshit now. Yeah, and then suddenly, yep, no, you guys have come a long way, we're going to help you out in this. And they are as terrifying as their reputation leads, but the fact that you know, get them in that moment, and yeah, as you say, 39 characters, and I cared about each and every one of them.
Oh, I know.
That's an accomplishment.
It is. It's... Who did you pair? Like, I had to have Laura with her dad, like, in B team. Like, I had to have that happen. But did you have any... And, like, I had to have Emma with Rosalia and Vita. I had to have all these things, and it was just... It was so cool, like, seeing everyone here, and for a lot of these characters, well, for the previous game's characters, this game was the first one where we could see them in 3D, where they got voiced, and it was crazy.
Voice acting aside from little bits and bites from, you know, after battle quotes and stuff. So yeah, it was again, that's why I had to stress at the very beginning. Yeah, this is a continuation of all of these games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Cold Steel 4. It's, you know, Legend of Heroes 9/12, whichever one you want to call it. It's that culmination. And yeah, like, the biggest thing I kept stressing to you when we were getting to the end is just like, there is nothing of this scope that has been done in video game format. Like, Avengers Endgame is the obvious comparison, because that is monolithic in terms of films. Like, it's 22 films, 10 years, all that time, effort, money, star power, all coalescing into that one big, you know, pretty spectacular film finish. But you don't get that in video games, because, like, you get your Smash Bros. Kind of thing, where you get all the characters represented, you get the DLC stuff and whatever, but none of them have the narrative focus.
Right.
That's the big difference. Like, all of these characters have had a long time, many games to be built up to. As I said, I cared about each and every one of them. And I mean, my review for Cold Steel 4 was like, I had to force myself not to just be gushing about the writing and story and characters for like 90% of the word count. So, but that's the strength of the series. That's what it all came to. And so that final boss fight nailed it.
Yeah.
As you say, like, I could have done so many different pairings, combinations, you know, whatever I wanted with getting the right teams, whether it was just for pure efficiency, whether it was for thematic reasons. There was no way I was going to fit everything all at once, though, because, well, it was impossible. There's just too much.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. You know, it still fell to your bullshit infinite Emma engine strategy, but
yeah.
Hey,
it and yes, look for that on our YouTube as well. That should be going up. Hopefully right around the time of this. I'm working on finishing edits, getting last footage, but yeah, I used it as well. Like, I swapped to, luckily I had my Laura, Le Guin, Arcade team on the magic reflect side, so I just swapped over there when I realized, okay, I see what the shtick is with this boss fight. So went over there, beat it pretty quickly, swapped back over to main team, and then started up the Emma engine. Because at that point, like, it was a cool fight and everything, but I wanted to see where this would end, like, what the ending of this game was going to be.
Yeah, how is it going to culminate?
Yeah. And to your point with just how this game connects narratively with so many others, I think game developers, the one that specifically comes to mind with me is the Kingdom Hearts series and, like, Tetsuya Nomura. Like, he tries to create this huge interconnected world and, like, universe, but I feel like the Trails series, the Legend of Heroes series, pulls it off what Nomura wishes he could. Like,
absolutely, I agree.
From giving random NPCs that you just interact with in towns names to, because there were characters that I remember one specific example. It was a character in the first Cold Steel that you help deliver packages because he was like brand new on the job or whatever. And then he shows up in this game and it's like, oh, you helped me out back when I was just starting out delivering those packages. I never would have finished without you. Here, let me help you or something. It's like those little touches to create this fleshed out world makes it feel like you have been with these characters and you have made a difference in the everyman's life. In these years between, I think it's been like I feel like it's been a little longer than like 2.5 years since the beginning of Cold Steel 1 to where they are now. Like, that's a bit of a jump for me.
There's a little bit of time dilation for a lot of it, which, because the entirety of 4 happens over the course of like a month.
Yeah.
It's really condensed even by Trails standards, because, they usually take place over like half a year or so.
Yeah. And it's only been, like, the span of time between within Cold Steel 3 and Cold Steel 4 is like 3 or 4 months, like, for both games, where with Cold Steel 1 and 2, it was like 2 years. Like, each game got roughly like a year time.
Well, it amounted to like the one single year at 4, so it was an entire one, and then the second, because they all graduated after 2, aside from Marine, who stuck around.
Right.
So, yeah. So it was effectively 1 year, but like even so, that's still like 3 times as long as this one, or this pair, so...
Yeah. It was fantastic. And the crazy thing is, as ridiculous as this game was and how good it did wrapping things up for the game so far, I think it did a really good job dropping just little tidbits and teases on what's coming next. And what craziness.
It didn't tie up every thread.
Exactly. And there were some pretty big reveals and teases. Specifically that comes to mind with me is McBurn. And how he's like this creature demon thing from what's coined the outside. Because apparently you can only sail so far around Zemuria before you just can't stop, and then like Eidos has put up basically a wall that shields the continent that you're on within itself.
Yeah, there's nothing else out there beyond the continent of Zemuria. It's not like a world or anything. There's no, new world. We're not having a, Trails of Cold Steel world or anything. No, it's just that continent. You can't progress. You can't progress beyond that for whatever reason, and it starts to create all sorts of interesting theories and implications, furthered by, of course, McBurn coming from the outside, which is, could be beyond that wall, could be part of that world, or
and the salt pails that with Northumbria that's been teased and talked about since Trails in the Sky the Third, and referenced a bunch here or throughout the Cold Steel games.
Yeah, they finally get their big attachment to the kind of overall thing. Like, as I was rereading the Black Records in the game, to get a little bit of an insight into what's coming, I'm just like, why do they keep mentioning this salt pail thing? And then in the final chapter, it's like, oh, I see. That does tie into the whole thing. So, yeah, but it does seem to be like an otherworldly outside force of sorts. But then, yeah, as you say, the fight with McBurn and also the fight with I forgot the names, Campanelle and Maribel. And all the conversations and stuff that ensue there. They give you probably the best insight we've had so far into the grand overarching scheme of Ouroboros, of what their aims are, and just, more about the world and what may or may not lie beyond.
Speaking on that, we get throughout the final dungeon and everything, we get a bit more information on what, like you said, Ouroboros' plan with the Phantasmal Blaze plan and what the whole Cold Steel thing has been, that they want to see how people will react and how things will go with these artifacts, with the Septarians, and how people react. And
the ultimate aim is simply not even to regain the Septarians or use them or anything. It's simply to observe how each of the 7 is reacted upon, is interacted with. Almost like it's just, they're just observers in this big, elaborate experiment that's been created.
Yeah.
Almost.
So what do you think they will do with the outside?
It's tricky. Like, but I have my theory. Like, my big theory at the moment is, do we want to talk about, like, the post-credit scene as
the
well?
epilogue? Sure.
That ties into it, so it's probably best to cover that first, I think. So.
Sure. So, in the epilogue, we head to Ouroboros's headquarters, where we see Campanella and Maribel talking between themselves. Excuse me, and how they need kind of to grow their ranks a bit, talking a little bit about Cedric, who is now an enforcer with Ouroboros, after kind of coming to his senses after the rivalries, which is in and of itself kind of interesting. I'm going to be curious to see what they do with that.
Most definitely.
But you finally see the Grandmaster.
Yeah, I'm not sure if their appearance has been hinted at before. I think their voice has been heard a couple of times, and in the Japanese version at least, they use a different voice actress each time, just to make sure nobody can kind of piece together anything.
Yeah.
So, but we finally get to see a pretty good look at the Grandmaster.
Who it turns out is the woman on the cover for Hajimari no Kaseki, the game that is currently only available in Japan, that takes place after Cold Steel 4.
Please localize it if anyone from NIS or Falcom or whoever is listening, please.
Yes.
Yes.
I think with as good of a review, like, Cold Steel 4 has been sitting pretty high. Like, it's been pretty well received, so I'm hoping that we will get it, but it still could be 2 years because the games are massive.
Like, I have faith that they're at least working on it more now, and they do seem legit in their desire to actually bring it to the West, more so now. So
yeah,
here's hoping. Fingers crossed.
Yes. But yes, with the Grandmaster, we find out a bit more of that the whole observing thing, and that this is it. Everything played out kind of how they were kind of expecting, and that it was time to start the next plan. The Orpheus something plan, I want to say.
Yeah, Orpheus something.
Let me bring up because I recorded. And if you were curious about these intros or the epilogue, be sure to check out DualShockers.com or DualShockers YouTube, where you can find videos of both. In case you want to check it out yourself, but she basically announces that it's time to put into place and start working on the next plan, which will no doubt begin the next big arc. The next game has kind of been Hajimari is kind of marketed as it's the end, but also the beginning. So it's the bridge game. It's the game that sets up a lot of things for the next big arc while tying up a lot of loose ends with the current games.
I believe the Romanized translation of it would be Trails of the Beginning, effectively. So
yeah,
so that makes sense.
So, but yeah, it's very exciting. But yes, going back to what do you think about the outside, and like what are kind of your thoughts? The third stage of the Orpheus final plan, the Eternal Recurrence plan, begins now. Is the final line of the Grandmaster.
And she put the date on it, like 3 years, effectively, before it's all done.
Yeah, that the Class 7 and everyone succeeding in what they did at the end of Cold Steel 4, beating Ishmelga, everything, that it delayed basically the end of the world for a little bit.
Yeah.
The world escaped the Great Twilight, extending its lifespan ever so slightly, she says. And then 3 years yet remain until all returns to primordial nothingness. Is what the Grandmaster says. And then it's time to begin the third stage of the Orpheus final plan, the Eternal Recurrence plan.
Right.
A couple of things that I think is interesting about this aspect, this line specifically. It's the third stage, so she's not saying it's the final stage specifically. So I think whatever big arc comes next, which I think is Calvert. That's, I feel, where they're heavily hinting at.
The strong implication is, and I mean that's the largest area that hasn't really been covered. It's Calvert, and then anything further east of Calvert is basically all that's left of Zemuria to really see.
Yeah.
Aside from like smaller areas or whatever within the Erebonia that weren't really touched. I don't think we've ever been to Jurai itself or anything like that. But
Jurai, Ambria, we haven't been to. Oh, what's the city? Rematheria with the church, and then Gralsritter. We haven't really been there.
That's Alteria.
Alteria. Yes, that's
Rematheria is the medical technology country.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's still a bunch of places we haven't been, but a lot of people are thinking that the next big arc will take place in Calvert, which would make sense at this point because it's been so pivotal in both in the Liberl arc with Sky and now Cold Steel.
Not to mention with Crossbell as well.
Oh yeah. So it would make perfect sense, and a lot of people have been curious about what Calvert is like, so that would be cool.
And politically now is the time, because the current president there, the elected president, has basically, his term is up and he's just finishing it off as of Cold Steel 4, so we still need to elect him. They didn't want to do a handover given that there was a war brewing and all, but so there'll probably be a time of turmoil, of changeover and everything, and that would be a good time to stick a game in there, I would say.
Yeah.
Really good chance to actually see what the country is like, what's going on, how it's all structured, and the thing that Trails does best, the world building and characterization of it all.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious in terms of with this whole outside thing. I'm curious if they will try to connect the Garhov trilogy somehow, like that's an area from the outside. Like Zemuria is a continent, but then the final game of the Trails series, the wall will come down and Zemuria will be no longer boxed in, and it'll be all these different continents or a big world for everyone to explore. And they might do callbacks to Garhov or do like full remakes of the Garhov trilogy. Who knows?
It could be nice.
Or who knows? Maybe they're setting up for a giant interconnected Falcom world where East and Trails all their games take place in the same world.
That could be pretty interesting. Pull back and it's another Zwei game. Haha.
Haha. Exactly. Oh man.
But my theory is a little different from that, just because I speculate. I've talked to you about this briefly, but my big theory about the whole thing is that it's a simulation. The entire thing outside literally refers to the real world. They're gonna Star Ocean 3 at Digital Devil Saga it.
Yeah.
The entire thing is just a set of experiments. And part of this ties into what we now know of how the Grandmaster looks and sounds. Just a lot of it strikes me because, again, woman, long hair, kind of has, just with the motif of music and everything like that. It's like, that sounds like church music. Is this Adios? It is the god of creation, the goddess of creation, literally overseeing Ouroboros and everything like that, because the entire thing is just her experiment. Is this an avatar? Why is she so powerful? Like the administrator avatar. that's my current reigning theory. And so outside could be, you know, an entirely different simulation, an entirely different aspect, or it could be literally the real world, air quotes says. Like again, Digital Devil Saga is probably the most apt comparison for that, because that's literally the plot between 1 and 2 of that. The entire first game is in a simulation of which they're all kind of like reincarnated memories of people, and then at the end of that game they go out into the real world where it was simulated, and everyone's like, how the hell did you do that? So yeah,
I can see that happening, and with the whole talk of AI and things, like I get more of almost a Xenoblade kind of vibe from it, more so than everything's a simulation. But I could see that happening, and I completely agree, and I could see that the Grandmaster of Ouroboros is Eidos, but at the same time, I feel like that's kind of a cop-out, and that's... Trails has done such a good job of kind of doing things narratively that you wouldn't expect. Like, at the end of Cold Steel 3 with the Courageous exploding and us thinking all the characters were dead. Things like that. It's... I would hate that... I would be disappointed. I shouldn't say I would hate it, but I would be disappointed if all these games wind up to, oh, you're just fighting the god who you've been worshiping the whole time. It's that's like such a JRPG trope that I would hope they wouldn't do that necessarily.
I'm of two minds of that, because while I can definitely understand, it's like, oh, that's the expected thing. The other take on that is that it's the expected thing because that's where the hints line up. And it's like, if you pay attention, you are rewarded by getting good insight into what's to come next. You don't want to just suddenly go, surprise, all these breadcrumbs were nothing. We subverted your expectations. That's, you know, less good. And while I do agree it is nice if you can, you know, really catch something off guard, I will settle for something that I could see coming only because I paid attention. Like, that was kind of something that, part of why I love Shadowbringers, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers was a lot of that. It's like, you are rewarded for paying attention and getting invested. And, yeah, it still manages to catch you off guard here and there, but the overall flow is largely as you would have expected.
Yeah.
So, there's two ways to do it in that regard.
Yeah, and I trust in the team to, even if that ends up being the case, that the journey there will be fantastic. So,
yeah, they're the masters at spinning plates as far as character details and stuff go. Because the fact that these characters are pretty much entirely consistent from every iteration of themselves over 9 games, how they're, you know, you can track their developments, their arcs, and yeah, just see how it all goes, and it all flows believably. It gives you reasons to care. Characters I didn't care for, I did by the end of it. Just, they're fantastic at making it real and giving it enough depth to actually care.
Right.
I suppose.
I would love... We'll get... I guess this would be a good time to talk a little bit about the ending credits,
yeah,
which
we
broke me down. Like, I broke down watching it.
Did I cry like a bitch?
Yeah. It was real good.
It was real good.
But yes, we see Olivert's and Scheherazad's wedding day.
Yep.
And everybody is there.
Yeah, all the characters that didn't get, like, pretty much every character was mentioned at the very least, but every character didn't make an in-flesh appearance throughout 3 and 4. They were there. All the, you know, the various extra Sky the Third characters and such that we didn't get a good look at. Everyone was there. Everyone was interacting. It's just a series of, you know, still images and panoramic shots, but it's just such a happy, satisfying, we fucking did it, guys, let's chill moment.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, the union of 2 characters who have been there since the beginning is, yeah, kind of a big deal. Like, Oliver's been, like, in every game, I think. Like, more than anyone else, he's had a consistent appearance in. So,
yeah. But like seeing the panorama, like you see Chloe, you see Sieg, her pet gear falcon, you see Cassius, you see Zin, you see all these characters, and like you said, from Trails in the Sky, so you see Reese, you see Kevin of the Girls Road, because they have these connections with Olivert and Scheherazade. So
and other characters that are in attendance as well.
And everyone else, you see Wazi and Noelle from Crossbell, Crossbell Games. You see all these characters with beautiful music playing. You see Class 7 hanging out. Reen's happy. And then and the part that wrecked us, a few simple sentences against the backdrop of a beautiful blue sky. Trails of Cold Steel has now reached its conclusion. And thank you for journeying with us through this saga until the very end.
And then it just finishes on a still shot of the combined Class 7. Just, hanging out, looking good, interacting with little words in the corner, see you again someday, somewhere, something like that.
Yep.
And like I was holding it together. I was really happy throughout the credits. Like, oh yeah, this is cute, this is sweet. And then Trails of Cold Steel has reached its conclusion.
I was just like, no, I don't want it to. I don't want it to.
No, don't make me go. Just, and it's like, they thanked us for joining in it, and I'm just like, why are you thanking me?
Yeah.
You pulled me along for this, and I was happy to be here because this was something special. It really was.
It is, and it's moments like this that make me dread finishing great games like this, or great books, or great movies. It's like, I've loved the journey, I've loved the adventure, but when credits roll, it's like, it's an interesting mix of sadness and happiness, because it's like, you'll never have this experience for the first time again. You'll never have those plot twists revealed, or the mouth, like when the Courageous 2 and Olivert makes his grand appearance and saves everybody, revealing he's alive in this game. Or the crazy team-ups. You'll never have that what moments again, and there will be of course there'll be fantastic games that will give us different moments, but it will never be these moments. And
with these characters in this place, in this world that is so richly developed, so well realized, so strongly written, that I spent literally hundreds of hours roaming around, talking to NPCs, getting memorizing their names, learning their stories. And it all just flowing believably. It's like if every single student in the Persona 5 school had a name and character arc, rather than just, a few of the ones that suffer from anime protagonist syndrome, It's that kind of thing. Not that those games aren't great, but they aren't as all-encompassing. That is the strength of Trails.
Yeah. It's, and just...
and that ending just... beautiful.
Yeah. And it's like, for a lot of people... really got interested, and myself included. I had picked up the original Cold Steel when it came out on PS3 and Vita, but the ending, or the beginning of the game was a bit slow for me, so I dropped it. And last year when Xseed released the kind of remastered or enhanced versions of Cold Steel, I ended up reviewing it for a different site, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just push through. And then I pushed through the slump in the beginning, and I fell in love with these characters. So in the past 2 years, basically, I have played through 6 Trails games, because after Cold Steel 3, it's like, okay, I need to be ready for Cold Steel 4, because things are about to go off. So I went back. I played through Trails in the Sky 1 through 3. I started the fan translation of Trails to Zero, and then I started this, and it was just like seeing that end montages of everyone, of characters that I fell in love with in the Sky games. or met in Crossbell. And then seeing it all, the new characters, of course, all of Class 7 and Sarah Valstein and the Count or Viscount and all these characters coming together, like shivers. I can't remember the last game. Maybe it was Metal Gear Solid 4 when you're back in Shadow Moses. Few games have given me as many chills and kind of goosebumps as this game did, and it was so special, and I can't wait to see where the series goes from here. And the Trail series, the Legend of Heroes series, has skyrocketed to, I hold it on the same pedigree and tier as I do of like a Final Fantasy, of a Kingdom Hearts, of a Tales game, of just when a new game of this comes out, it's like I will be as hyped for that game as I would for new games of any of those others. Some even more so, just because I know this world is growing.
Just by the name, by the company.
Yeah.
Like by the development team. It's like, yep, you have earned my benefit of the doubt in a world so cynical, in an industry so twisted. Just, no. I have faith that you guys are likely to give me something really special. That you're going to put in that kind of creativity and passion that really shines through in the series. Very few get that on these days.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. Like, if this is as crazy as this got, what will it be at the end of the next saga, where that world, like, these characters will come and who knows what craziness. It's like we just keep adding to and expanding this world. And I can't wait to see, like, when all is said and done, when it is the final game of the final arc of these Trails game, what crazy shit will go down.
Yeah, how we're gonna need the new consoles SSDs just to load all the bloody characters in. There's gonna be too many.
It's just like
yeah,
like Class 7 is like adults, like, and like Joshua and Estelle as like S-rank racers. Who knows? Like Cassius fighting alongside, like seriously fighting alongside, like Viscount Arcade or General Le Guin, or Reen, the new Divine Blade, which is a whole nother thing.
Oh yeah, there's so many little moments we could touch on as well. Just as you say, the Divine Blade moment, like that's great. Like, oh, what happens when we get all 8 leaves together, you know?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's craft and a half.
You have that. You have the other Divine Blade of Wind, Arios, that was hinted at, and he's from the Crossbell games. He's hinted at. You have Rishia, who's working alongside him, who's like the crazy assassin lady that you fought as Reen along, who was with Lloyd Bannings at the end of Cold Steel 2. You have...
I'm surprised she wasn't in this one because of that. You'd think they at least
had
a model. Yeah. Anyway.
But you have these characters that have been hinted at, and what I love about this game, it's like they'll say, oh yeah, Ouroboros is up to some crazy stuff out in the east, so we have like these super badass people trying to handle and keep that under wraps. And it's like, what crazy stuff is going on in the east that will require like an S-ranked bracer, a legendary assassin, and like 4 of the Gralsritter, just like keeping things under control that way. It's like, what the heck is going on? Like, that's a lot of manpower to deal with.
There's a lot of hints of things like that. Plus, and you know, it's all gonna tie into the Septarians in their own way, shape, and form, most likely, because, well, that's kind of the crux of it all.
Yeah.
So, yeah. These big elemental gods, more or less.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So good.
I'm really looking forward to it. And, you know, as soon as I find a time in my schedule, I'm going to go back and finish the games I haven't finished. I'm still like a little bit into Trails of the Sky. I want to play the Fan Trans. I want to play all of it, obviously.
Yeah.
And then who knows? I'll probably just do a marathon session of, you know, Trails of Cold Steel, take up 6 months of my time. Why not?
Well, with the New Game Plus, you'd be starting over with like super high level characters, so You could You could just do a narrative playthrough.
That's true. I could. I'm fairly sure I still got my old playthroughs of 1 and 2 on my PS3 if I want to fish that out. But yeah. Point is, I am always down to return to Zemuria at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this game, fantastic. They managed to wrap up, you know, all the threads that were pertinent to this, to the Cold Steel arc, tie in the other characters to it, so their, you know, presence was required, and it all made sense. It built logically off a lot of the things, like, you know, things like Hamel, things like obviously Crossbell's integration into the Empire. All this stuff ties directly into the other stories, and all just builds naturally. And it all came to a head with Ishmael Galog, and it was fantastic. It really was. So I think this is both our games of the year at this point.
Hands down. Like, I'm glad that I didn't have to. I'm glad I don't have to choose between this game and the original Persona 5, because that would be very hard for me. Persona 5 Royal was really good, but so much of it was a game I had already played. There wasn't that much surprise to it, so that's why for me anyway, Cold Steel 4 easily trumps that. But yeah, this game is just so good. I've already started my Nightmare playthrough. It's just like, it's really not all that difficult. All my characters are like 150, so I'm still in like chapter 2 or chapter 1, doing all that stuff, but love this game. I can't wait to see where these characters go. My soon-to-be mother-in-law, I already know, got me Hajimari no Kaseki for Christmas. So we'll see how that goes. I guess there's like a fan translation overlay program I can use to figure things out, so we'll see.
Best of luck with that. Keep me abreast of that, because I want to know.
I shall. But do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up, Kris?
I think we covered a lot of the major beats. Obviously, this was primarily on the ending and the thoughts and conclusions or whatever, but like, if you have somehow listened to all this and haven't played these games, well, what the hell is wrong with you for a start? Like, the spoilers, we said so. Come on. Seriously though, it doesn't matter if you know the twist. It doesn't matter if you see that coming. Go check it out. Stick with it. A couple of slow starts here and there, but let yourself sink into it, get invested, take the time to talk to people, and you'll find something to love here. You really will. I share a lot of the same sentiment. Give these games, give the previous games a chance. Give this series deserves not just Cold Steel, but Legend of Heroes Trails, even the older games, deserve the renown that a lot of other JRPG series have. I would even say more so. Like, these games are, in my opinion, are far superior to a lot of the Final Fantasies of the past few years, just in terms of narrative and things. What they lack in graphical fidelity, they make up for in writing, in combat systems, in just
character
design, presentation, music, especially music. Music is so good.
Yes.
Yeah. These have always been a kind of middle tier game in terms of like budget and attention, but they deserve to be at the top, and more people need to try them. It's so worth it. I'm glad I took a chance on it. I just, again, like you, I just happened to take a chance on it. I just saw the first Cold Steel. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I'd heard a little bit about Trails in the Sky in the past. Like, yeah, I'll give it a go. Bit of a slow start, and then eventually I'm just like, wow, this is good.
Pays off. It just really pays off. So give it a try.
You'll get so much more out of it.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, it's so nice that we have a very similar position with this game than we did with our previous discussion of the 7 remake.
Yeah, that was a little more contentious in our feelings on the matter.
Right.
But, this time, nothing but glowing praise.
Completely. Well, Kris, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this here ending that we both were blown away by. Always good to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Always good.
Pleasure.
But yes, remember, folks, if you want, you can check out the true ending as well as the epilogue that we referenced and talked about here in this discussion on our DualShockers YouTube channel, so check those out. And in the meantime, be sure to check out DualShockers.com for the latest news, reviews, editorials, and all sorts of good stuff over at DualShockers.com. And until next time, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to one each other. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.